I won the biggest contract of my career on a Tuesday morning. The client called at 8:47 a.m. The deal was worth $3.2 million over 3 years. It was the kind of victory that changes trajectories. The kind that makes you feel like years of fighting actually meant something. I hung up the phone and texted my husband one word: yes. His response came 40 seconds later: "That's amazing. We should celebrate." What I didn't know was that he was already at a bar with his brother, drinking away the morning, and when he read my message, he said something that made me understand our entire marriage in a way I'd never quite managed before. She finally did something worth acknowledging. I learned this from his brother's wife, who overheard him, who felt disgusted enough to tell me. And that's where the story actually begins. Everyone assumed I married up. Not financially. Garrett didn't have money when we met. But socially. He had the kind of charm that made people believe in him before he'd actually done anything. He had the kind of confidence that suggested futures were inevitable. I was 25, working at a mid-sized marketing firm, building campaigns for brands that would forget me the moment I moved on. He was 28, talking about ventures he was going to launch, businesses he was going to build, empires he was going to create. He was mostly talk. But his talk was compelling. When he said we should get married after 6 months of dating, it felt less like a proposal and more like the next logical step in his narrative. I said yes because I believed him. Because I thought his ambition was about execution, not just performance. I was wrong. Over the next 7 years, I watched him start 3 businesses. All 3 failed. All 3 times, I absorbed the financial loss while he absorbed the lessons he learned and pivoted to the next idea. I didn't resent it at first. That was what partners did. You supported each other through the failures. Except I was doing all the supporting. Meanwhile, my career was building quietly, methodically, without fanfare or announcement. The campaigns I built started winning industry recognition. The clients I managed became loyal to me specifically, not the firm. My reputation grew, in the kind of way that doesn't announce itself at dinner parties, but shows up in paychecks and opportunities. But here's the thing about being successful while married to someone whose identity is built on potential. He started to resent the gap between what he talked about and what I actually did. What he said when he thought I wasn't listening. It started small. Jokes that weren't quite jokes. Comments that landed somewhere between affection and criticism. "You're so focused on work," he'd say. "Sometimes I wonder if you remember you have a husband." I'd laugh. I'd make more time. I'd suggest date nights he'd cancel because something came up with whatever venture he was currently pursuing. Then his brother got married. The rehearsal dinner was at a restaurant downtown. Garrett's family was there, his parents, his siblings, their partners. It was the kind of event where people get drunk and honest, where the filters slip off and what's underneath finally gets air. I went to the restroom during dinner. On my way back, I passed the bar area where Garrett and his brother Marcus were standing with Marcus's best man. Garrett didn't see me. I heard my name first, so I stopped walking. "How is she doing at that firm?" his brother asked. "Getting promoted," Garrett said. "Again. That's good, right?" the best man said. Garrett laughed. A real laugh. The kind that suggested something was funny that I didn't understand yet. "It's fine," he said. "But let's be honest. I married down in terms of ambition. She was supposed to be someone I could build things with, you know? Someone who would be invested in my vision. Instead, she's become this corporate climber. She's not even the woman I married anymore." My hands went cold. "I was forced into this marriage by her family, honestly," he continued. "They pressured me, made me feel like I had to commit. And I did because I was young and stupid. But if I'm being real, not my type. Never has been. I stayed because I made a commitment, but this life? It's suffocating." The best man said something I didn't catch. I didn't stay long enough to hear Garrett's response. I walked back to the table and spent the rest of dinner smiling and nodding at appropriate moments. Garrett didn't notice anything was different. Why would he? I was performing the same role I'd been performing for 7 years. The supportive wife, the one in the background, the one whose wins were supposed to be his wins, and his losses were supposed to be our losses. That night, I lay awake in bed next to him and understood something cold and clear. He didn't resent my success. He resented that I had success while he had only stories about it. I didn't confront him. Instead, I did something that surprised even me. I became ruthlessly strategic about my own life. I stopped mentioning my work at home. When he asked about my day, I gave vague answers. When opportunities came up, I made decisions independently, without consulting him. When I got raises, I didn't celebrate them at home. I stopped asking about his ventures. I stopped supporting his ideas. I stopped being the person who absorbed his failures. I became invisible in the way that only someone who's been paying close attention can become invisible. I was present but not engaged. I was there but not invested. Garrett noticed, but not in the way I expected. He interpreted my withdrawal as depression. He started suggesting I needed therapy. He called my sister and expressed concern about my emotional distance. He was reframing my refusal to center his life as a personal problem I had. I let him. Meanwhile, I was working on the Morrison contract. Morrison Industries was the kind of client every marketing firm dreamed about. National reach, massive budget, the potential to set a career trajectory for decades. When they released an RFP, every firm in the city submitted a proposal. The selection process took 6 months. I built the strategy alone. I didn't bounce ideas off Garrett. I didn't ask for his input. I didn't make him feel like he was part of my success. When I won, he was shopping with his mother. The truth emerges. His brother's wife called me the day after my victory. Her name was Simone. We weren't close, but we'd always been cordial. She called from her car, and her voice was shaky in a way that suggested she'd been building up to this moment for a while. "I need to tell you something," she said. "And I need you to know that I'm telling you not because I'm trying to hurt you, but because I couldn't live with myself if I didn't." She told me about the rehearsal dinner. She told me what Garrett had said. But she also told me more. She told me that Marcus had mentioned it to her that night, and she'd confronted both of them about it. She told me that Garrett had doubled down, insisting that his statements were just venting, just frustration, nothing meant seriously. But she also told me that she'd been thinking about it ever since. "The thing that bothers me," Simone said, "is that he wasn't angry. When men vent about their marriages, there's usually something underneath it. Pain or fear or genuine unhappiness. But he sounded superior. Like he was above you somehow. Like he was doing you a favor by staying." I was quiet for a long time. "Thank you for telling me," I finally said. "I'm sorry it had to be me," she replied. After we hung up, I sat in my car in the parking garage and let the reality of it settle. Garrett had never been forced into our marriage. His family had never pressured him. That was a lie he told himself to feel less complicit in the life he'd chosen. He hadn't stayed out of commitment. He'd stayed because I was convenient, because I made space for his ambitions, because I absorbed his failures and celebrated his narratives. And the moment I became successful in a way he couldn't rewrite as his own contribution, the moment my wins existed independently of his vision, he started to panic. The reckoning. I didn't tell him I knew. Instead, I made a choice that surprised no one more than it surprised me. I hired a divorce attorney. Not immediately. Not with anger. I gave myself 3 weeks to sit with the decision and make sure it was what I actually wanted. It was. The attorney was a woman named Victoria Chen. She was direct in a way I appreciated. When I told her the situation, she didn't offer sympathy. She offered strategy. "Document everything," she said. Not just finances. His statements about the marriage. Anything that suggests he's been checked out emotionally. His failed ventures, and how they impacted your finances. The gap between his contribution and yours. "Why?" I asked. "We don't have kids. We don't have property disputes." "Because," she said, "men like your husband will try to rewrite the narrative. They'll claim you were married in name only. They'll suggest you force them to stay. They'll position themselves as victims. I want you to have a record that contradicts that." Over the next month, I quietly compiled everything. Financial records showing how much I'd subsidized his failed ventures. Screenshots of his social media where he posted about his upcoming launches, while I was in the background doing the actual work. Emails where he'd taken credit for my ideas in front of clients. And then I waited for the right moment. The conversation. It happened 3 weeks after I won the Morrison contract. Garrett was in a good mood. The contract success had shifted the social dynamics in a way he could leverage. Suddenly, he had a wife who was important. Suddenly, the marriage had some prestige he could attach himself to. He mentioned celebrating with his friends. A dinner, maybe. Could we do something to announce the victory? I agreed. Then I told him I wanted to talk before we did any celebrating. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where he'd complained about my career trajectory to his brother. The same table where he'd absorbed credit for my wins and responsibility for none of his failures. I need to tell you something, I said. And I need you to listen without interrupting.
He started to speak.
I held up my hand. I know what you said at Marcus's rehearsal dinner. I know you told people you were forced into this marriage. I know you've told everyone you're not satisfied with who I am. I know you've been presenting yourself as trapped. His face went pale. How did you? It doesn't matter, I said. What matters is this. I've spent 7 years making space for your ambitions. I've absorbed your failures. I've celebrated your narratives while quietly doing the actual work. And the moment I became successful in a way that doesn't depend on you, the moment I won something that's entirely mine, you started panicking. He tried to interrupt. I continued. I'm filing for divorce. My attorney will be reaching out to your attorney. There won't be a messy process. I'm going to make this simple for both of us. You'll take nothing from the marriage except the lessons you should have learned already. Alina, please, he said. The first real emotion I'd heard from him in months. Let's talk about this. Let's work on it. No, I said. We're done talking. You've said everything I needed to hear. The after. The divorce took 4 months. It was clean, which surprised him. It was simple, which infuriated him. It was final, which terrified him. When the papers were signed, he tried one more time to reframe the narrative. He told his friends that I was ungrateful, that I'd become someone unrecognizable, that I'd abandoned the marriage for career success. Nobody believed him. Mostly because his brother had finally told the truth about what he'd said. Mostly because his own actions had already written the ending before I ever mentioned divorce. The Morrison contract transformed everything. Within 6 months, I'd recruited a team and started my own firm. Within a year, we'd landed 3 more major clients. Within 2 years, the firm was valued at $15 million. I didn't have a husband to celebrate with, but I had something better. I had a life that was entirely mine. The truth about revenge. Garrett reached out to me once, about a year after the divorce was finalized. He sent an email asking if we could talk. He said he was sorry. He said he'd been through therapy and understood his behavior better. He said he missed me. I read it once and deleted it. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. He wasn't sorry because he'd hurt me. He was sorry because he'd lost access to the infrastructure that had supported his narrative. He wanted me back because having a successful wife made him look better than having no wife at all. I was irrelevant to him, and that irrelevance was the most powerful position I'd ever occupied. People ask me if I feel like I won, if I feel like I got revenge. The truth is more complicated. I didn't destroy Garrett. He destroyed himself the moment he decided that my success was a threat instead of something to celebrate. I didn't plot his downfall. I just stopped being the person who prevented it. And in doing that, I discovered something that most people don't understand about revenge. It's not about making someone suffer. It's about stopping the suffering you've been inflicting on yourself. The final truth. 6 months ago, I saw Garrett at a conference. He was there with another woman, younger. The kind of woman who probably still believes his stories about ambition and vision. He looked different. Smaller somehow. Like he'd lost the ability to take up space the way he used to. When our eyes met across the room, I saw him hesitate. For a moment, he looked like he might approach me. Like he might try to rewrite the past one more time. Then he saw my face. Not angry. Not sad. Just present. Just focused on the conversation I was having with a client. Just moving through my life without needing him to witness it or validate it or claim credit for it. He turned away. And I realized something in that moment. The best revenge isn't watching someone fall. It's becoming so successful, So focused, so entirely yourself that they realized they were never as important to your life as you were to theirs. Final confession. My name is Alina Kessler. My husband once told me I forced him into marriage, that I was never his type, that he was suffocating in the life I'd built. What I learned was this. He wasn't suffocating because of me. He was suffocating because I was finally telling the truth, and the truth doesn't make space for beautiful lies. I won the biggest contract of my career the day he learned that success doesn't require permission, that confidence doesn't need validation, that the most powerful thing a woman can do is stop making herself smaller so someone else can feel taller. If you're in a marriage where you're doing the work while someone else is getting the credit, if you're shrinking your wins so his ego doesn't feel threatened, if you're absorbing his failures while celebrating his narratives,
Know this.
the exit already exists. You don't have to ask permission to leave. You don't have to explain yourself to someone who's already decided not to see you clearly. You just have to decide that your life is worth more than the story he's telling about it. I made that decision, and everything changed. Like this video if you believe in reclaiming your own narrative. Subscribe if you know that the best revenge is becoming too successful to need anyone's approval. Share this with someone who needs to hear that their wins belong to them, and them alone. I'm Alina Kessler, and this is my story of the moment I stopped performing and started living.